I am indeed unmedicated and ready to go.
Thank you for joining the Escape With Me Book Club. Escape with me, Sam Reiner.
And I'm Hannah Rossell.
Into our most recent read. Come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about a new book. We'll be covering the book from beginning to end, so there will be spoilers. Today we're going to the coast of Cornwall, England. Published February 1932, Peril at End House puts Poirot at the opposite side of murder, trying to prevent it instead of solving it. With the famed Poirot on the case, will the murderer be stopped before they succeed, or will they manage to trick the great detective himself? So to go on to our historical context, we're looking at the last Perot book to this one, so 1930 to February 1932, because in the last episode I just went ahead and finished out the year. So she is recently married to her new husband, her second husband. They stay married for the rest of their lives. And so she ends up doing a lot of traveling with him because he's an archaeologist. So we get a lot of books inspired by her travels. Obviously, we're almost to Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile.
Death on the Nile. How ominous.
I think Death in Mesopotamia or something. I can't remember. I had it and then you said Death on the Nile and then it went out of my brain again. But there's a lot of books inspired by her travels with her husband. But there's also a lot of her books set in and around her hometown. And this is one of those books. This is in an area near where she grew up. Not currently living. Their houses were all in London, all the different ones they bought. So this was kind of bringing back her childhood a little bit, the luscious descriptions. So in her professional life, she helped form what's called the Detective Club, which is a group of British mystery writers of the time, and it's something that still exists today. Probably their most famous member being Agatha Christie, but she's the most famous author ever, one of the best-selling authors of all time, and then There Is None is the 6th best-selling book of all time, period. She is very well known, so to be like, oh, the most famous is Agatha Christie, yeah, because she's just the most famous, period. So what these club meetings consisted of was they would meet for dinners, and then they would go over each other's work. Murder Club. Yeah, they called it a detective club, but of course it's Murder Club.
Yes.
Some fun things about them. They believed in what's known as Knox's commandments, one of which is giving the reader a fair chance to guess the guilty party.
Huh, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
That's why we do this. You've got to have one heck of a story. But the club was more relaxed. You know, it wasn't hard, fast rules. Like if you didn't follow these, you get kicked out or whatever. And so not everyone followed him. And sometimes people, you know, did whatever they wanted with their writing.
Shocker. Yeah.
And like I said, it still exists today.
I wonder how it's changed from back then to today. Has it just stayed the same or has it changed to keep up with the times?
That is a great question. It would have to change over time. I cannot imagine we're coming up to almost 100 years later.
Yeah, I would be shocked if it hadn't.
It has to be. So one of the interesting things is one of the books Agatha Christie published is in between in 1931 is called The Floating Admiral. And it has a bunch of detective stories from people in the detective club. So Christie wrote a chapter and then a bunch of other authors also wrote chapters.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that was during her detection. Is it detective club or detection club? Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Detection Club. I regret everything.
Detective Club, Detection Club, tomato.
This was not created for dyslexics.
It's close enough, right?
It's fine. I kind of wonder what they're going to do for their 100th year celebration, you know?
Yeah, I wonder if they'll do anything special.
One day, I mean, we definitely don't have a low amount of books that we want to cover, but if we ever get curious, we should just pick another famous author from the club and go down their rabbit hole.
Yeah, see if there's any overlaps in writing style and how they did things.
Yeah, and see if we like it or not. But we have to get through all these.
Add it to our list that's totally not already super long.
It's so long. Agatha Christie books, we could have enough material. And so she published The Floating Admiral, and then in 1932, she published the Sittaford Mystery, which is just a general mystery novel. It doesn't have any of her Detectives of the Multiverse in it.
Detectives of the Multiverse. I love that.
They run into each other. They talk to each other. They meet each other.
Fair.
She was running the long con.
She was.
Background. So this one's new for both of us, though I did manage to solve this book. Very proud of myself. So this is age level adult and content warning. Suicide is mentioned, racism against Jewish people, xenophobia, sexism, murder, language PG-13. I don't know why I had suicide mentioned because there is suicide, and definitely illicit drugs, which is new for an Agatha Christie book.
Is.
I don't think we've ever had one that so heavily revolved around illicit drugs in the Perot series.
Yeah, they played a pretty big part.
Anyway, judge this book by its cover. So it has palm leaves and this really nice house.
Very tropical looking.
Yeah, and that's what my thoughts were. I thought this would be a tropical location.
I was like, are we going to like Hawaii or something?
Yeah, well, I thought like Tahiti.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, what was a popular tropical destination? But seagulls, you have the lovely coast.
Yeah, and then they start the book complaining about how it's cold in England and how it's like, oh, it's actually warm for once.
Yeah, so I know nothing about Cornwall, but I see why so many people gather there.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing. There's a plane in the background, and once you read the book, that's in connection to one of the characters. But I thought that meant they were going to have a plane ride to go to a tropical island.
Mm.
I know nothing about England beaches, so maybe someone else could immediately, oh, that's Cornwall, but not me.
It kind of reminds me of the house from
Daisy Darker.
Thank you, yes.
That's what I thought of too, looking at this. There's even a canoe. It's like, okay, maybe this is a really remote area, and Peril at Endhouse, maybe there's going to be a little bit more action like she did with the Big Four, maybe not. Those were my thoughts. All of them were wrong, because the first thing that we both learned, Hastings is back. I don't know what list you read when we did that one episode when we were like, oh, he's only going to show up XYZ times. Lies.
It lied.
It lied.
It's fine. He wasn't unbearable this time, which I hate to say, but it's true.
He wasn't so bad this time. I will agree. I didn't mind him so much in Black Coffee, but that's because he was just a sounding board. This time, it worked out because Poirot and Hastings were confused.
I know. It wasn't like one was outshining the other.
And so, granted, Poirot absolutely stokes the fires that cause Hastings to go off, but...
Granted, it's not that hard to do for him.
It's not hard. But he does it. He is an instigator. Facts.
Yes.
But Hercule and Hastings are vacationing together.
Yeah.
Hastings, where's your wife?
I know.
She's even mentioned in the book. Why is she not vacationing with you?
Yeah. Is she at home taking care of the ranch? And then it starts the book off with Hastings being like, oh, that girl's cute. And I'm like, Hastings, you're married.
Oh, sure.
You're also ancient. She's like 20. Back off.
I think he's only like 30.
Shh.
Oh my gosh. Bella gets mentioned in the book because Poirot's like, oh, yeah, I take your thoughts and I know if you think it, you're thinking wrong. And he's like, well, Bella takes my thoughts seriously. And honestly, I just immediately thought she's one of those wives that knows how to get what she wants.
She just nods and goes, mm-hmm, of course, sweetie.
That makes her husband think it's his idea.
Oh, yeah. Hastings would totally fall for that, too.
So fast. So I don't know about that, Hastings. I think Poirot is also in the know here.
Oh, yeah. Papa Poirot.
Because we saw her doing that in the second Poirot book. We saw her being like, oh my gosh, dead bodies, da-da-da-da-da. And Hastings being like, oh, do you want to see the dead body? Well, if you insist.
Yeah. She's a smart girl.
She's a smart girly. Maybe she also hates Hastings. I don't know. He goes on freaking vacation. I get it. He shows up for business stuff, whatever. Sure, fine. Vacation.
I don't know. Maybe she was also vacationing and was just like, I'm going to do my own thing.
Girl, no. She is not on this continent.
No, I mean, if I lived in a house in Argentina, I probably wouldn't want to leave either.
It'd be a lot warmer.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Are we ever going to see Bella ever again? I have no idea.
Probably not.
Which is a shame.
I know. I want to see more of Bella and less of Hastings.
If Bella was here, she could have gotten the girl talk. Bella could have been very useful in here.
Yes, absolutely.
But alas, that is not the lot in life we were given.
Nope.
So it starts with, of course, Hercule insisting that he's retired. With Hercule getting a letter from Homeland Security and showing it to Hastings and being like, oh my gosh, look who's talking to me. And Hastings being like, oh yeah, so you're going to text him back? And Hercule being like, nah.
Text him back.
I am using slang. This is our modern night. But seriously, hands Hastings the letter. Is like, oh, look, Homeland Security's interested in me. And Hastings is like, so you're going to write them back? You're going to take the case? He's like, nah, I've solved enough cases for him. I've done his job long enough.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, there's no way any case will ever tempt Hercule Poirot again. And then immediately a case falls into his lap.
And he's like, I must solve this.
There is a book series now, Cozy Murder Mystery, that the title is Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies. Hercule Poirot.
Truly. Maybe he's the murderer all along. He's just a prolific serial killer.
Except it's not him.
I know. Conspiracy theories, right?
He would be too good at it.
Truly would not get caught. It'd be kind of scary.
So a woman approaches them. Also, Perot hurts his ankle, which I thought was going to be a bigger deal, but it wasn't.
Yeah, me too.
Approaches them, talks to them a little bit, is all like, oh, hey, I've had 3 near-death experiences. She leaves and leaves the hat. And so Perot picks it up. And here's where it went off the trails already for me. He picks up the hat, finds a bullet hole in it.
Yeah, after she was like, a wasp flew by my face. And he's like, that was no wasp.
And the bullet was just in her hair?
Oh, I thought it flew through the hat and was on the ground because I thought he had picked it up.
I don't know. Maybe that is what happened, but I was just so sus.
He showed her the bullet, too. He was like, here, I found this.
So sus. I immediately was just like, how? How?
Yeah, and then later in the book, I was like, how did she do that? With no spoilers.
No spoilers, but spoilers because we warned you. Of course, we can't go anywhere without a little Perot snark in the Hastings saying, Perot, I have been thinking, and Perot responding, an admirable exercise, my friend, continue it.
That made me laugh so hard.
And that kind of took away my, oh no, Hastings is back. Immediately was like, okay, I did kind of miss this.
He was very sassy.
Perot has his best lines with Hastings.
He does.
It's just facts. So immediately Hercule is like, so now I'm obsessed with this case.
Yeah.
I must know everything about this woman because she is being murdered. And how dare someone try to murder someone under the nose of Hercule Poirot?
He's not conceited at all.
That is all it took to get him out of retirement. Screw Homeland Security and treason and whatever the heck they wanted. Anyway, it's fine.
But his pride can never be doubted or questioned.
And murdering a pretty woman is a goalpost too far.
Too much.
So he ends up kind of getting fixated on her. She doesn't even ask, like, oh, solve this or whatever. But Hercule just, like, picks it up. He's like, I'm officially invested.
Yeah.
Goes to the lunch to give her the hat back and observes the party of 4. It's Nick, whose name is actually Magdalene, but her grandfather's name was Nick.
Yeah.
Kind of like how I'm Sam because my grandfather was Sam, but that's not my name. But Magdala Buckley. Then you have her friend George Challenger, which is just the stereotypical older military guy interested in the 20-year-old.
Creepy.
It's always a colonel. It's always a military guy. He's in the Navy, so I don't think he's colonel, but I don't remember what his rank was.
Challenger?
Yeah, his last name is Challenger. George Challenger.
Oh, his last name is Challenger. I was like, that's a rank I've never heard of before.
No, that's literally his last name. But an older military guy interested in a 20-year-old. How many times have we seen that trope?
How many more times?
How many more times? That is a great question. So that's the role he plays. And even she knows that she uses that trope so much. She doesn't even waste any time on character development for him. He literally shows up and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm interested in Nick. Bye.
Yeah.
That's as much as you're going to get out of me. So more interesting characters. Freddie Rice, who is Frederica.
Such a cool name.
Is Nick's friend. Literally the first thing she says to two strangers about her friend Nick is that she's a liar.
I know. Yeah, I was like, dang, girl. Okay.
And so I was half and half with her because either she's lying or she's telling the truth.
Yeah, but then Poirot points out at the end that they had sort of fallen out with each other, were like out of sorts.
Yeah, but it's the first thing you say. That's a level of catty. It's a lot. So it's one or the other. But even if she is a liar, girl, your first interaction, she's a liar. Okay.
Tell me, stepping out on facts, I guess.
Tell me how you really feel. And then we have Jim Lazarus, who is important to the mystery solution, but is not an important character.
No, he just sort of shows up. Has a nice car, apparently.
So he's an art dealer whose business is doing questionably, and offered Nick $50 for a painting that's worth maybe $20.
Yeah.
So he's sus for those reasons. Also, Freddie and Jim seem like they're a thing. So you meet all of those four. I've basically told two of their storylines. We don't need to bring up Jim or George ever again, honestly. We'll bring up Freddie as she's relevant. But the 3 murder attempts plus the bullet were a heavy painting falling on her bed. It's positioned over the bed, and the wire snapped, and it fell on the bed. But thankfully, she was not there at the time in bed. She was doing something else. Second, she was climbing down a rocky path to the beach, and a boulder came by and almost hit her a la Death on the Nile. But technically reversed, because that book obviously comes after this. But
yeah.
And then her brakes going out while driving. And we don't get the technicalities, but we are assured by a mechanic that it doesn't just happen. Someone had to have tampered with her brakes. So that is the only one of the 3 where it's like, yes, someone deliberately had to do this. And obviously also the bullet. Bullets just don't happen to hit people. Someone has to shoot it.
But yeah, they don't just show up.
Yeah, so Perot is very concerned for her, tries to make her take it seriously. She seems to not be taking it seriously. So just really impressing on her, this is very important. You need to care for your safety. Someone is literally trying to murder you.
You could die.
And there is a part where Nick calls Hastings Dr. Watson.
Yeah. Yes.
Christie knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
She's like, I know you people say it all the time. I hear you, okay? And she also says, oh, I've never heard of Hercule Poirot ever. And it's a little funny because Poirot deflates.
He's so wounded. He's like, you've never... What? Everyone's heard of me.
He's so wounded about it. Are you kidding me?
He tries to play it off.
Yeah, and so Hastings is like, yeah, he's clearly hurt. So that's the setup. Oh, one more thing. The gun used to shoot the hole in the hat tried to kill Nick, supposedly, is from the same gun that Nick's dad owned, and she inherited, of course. And, of course, the gun is missing. Who could have gotten it? Anyone! I just leave the doors unlocked and everything around everywhere.
Yeah, you know, whatever.
So, Perot's really upset. So let's get the story moving. That's all the background. Perot's really upset about this, really wants to solve this, doesn't want anyone to be murdered. And he just points out it's really hard because when someone's murdered, the murderer has signed their name to it. And so there are undoubtedly clues to lead to the fact that it did happen, because it did happen. So preventing something from happening is way harder to try to get clues for and to understand. So one of his ideas is, hey, is there anyone you can get to come and stay with you in your room? Because I cannot do that. He's like, I have enough propriety to know I cannot stay in your room. So is there literally anyone you can get to come? And she says, okay, I'll wire my cousin and get her out here. And there's a little weird thing where Perot's like, send for her immediately. And she's like, I can't send her immediately. She can't come here on a Sunday. That would seem way too worried. I'll wait till Monday. And so at this point, I was like, so she dead?
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is the end of Nick.
She gone. We're done.
When we got to the chapter titled Tragedy, I was like, oh, so she dies here.
Goodbye, Nick.
Yeah.
You were not longed for this world. Lies. So the investigation begins. Perot is looking for motives here. He makes a list of A through J characters, all these different possible suspects, and their different motives and questions he has about them and such and so forth. So first thing, of course, you do, who benefits from her death? Which is a little interesting because Perot points out, so these are blatant murder attempts. So anyone who directly benefits from the death probably isn't the murderer.
Yeah, like that would just be too obvious, you know?
But you come to find out that all that's willed is the house is going to go to her cousin Charles, because she's the end of a dynasty, basically. And as of right now, she has no heir to pass on. So willed the house to Charles, except the house is in desperate need for repairs. So it's basically a money hole.
And it's mortgaged.
She has gifted him a liability, not an asset.
Yeah.
And then any money she has left over, which she really doubts there will be any, she gives to Freddie.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that Perot starts noticing. Freddie claims that she was out of town the past couple of days.
Yes.
And she just got into town and she claims, oh, I was with such and such. And Perot's like, oh, do you know this person? And she's like, no. And he was like, you did not go there. And you eventually find out that she was staying with Jim.
Yeah.
Scandalous.
Ooh, especially because she's still married.
Yes, she is in the process of divorce. Her husband is abusive, and you come to find out a drug addict, and his influence got her hooked on drugs, which she's having an issue with. That's one thing. I think it was Nick who was just like, oh yeah, she does drugs. She does cocaine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's serious.
Yeah, don't just be so casual. She's like, oh yeah, my best friend does cocaine. Girl, shouldn't you be a little more worried?
Well, I mean, she does it recreationally, so...
True. That is very true.
I don't know. You can tell there's no love lost for them. Later on, you find out that they don't actually like each other, and you're not surprised.
No, I was like, how are they friends?
Best friends.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Charlie in the Chocolate Factory when Veruca Salt walks up to, the girl that becomes the blueberry.
Violet. And
they're like, best friends? And then the other one goes, best friends. And then they link arms and walk off. And it's like, those are some enemies right there.
Oh, yeah.
That is how girls be enemies, for sure. So here's the thing. There's a lodge. And because she desperately needs money, and heaven forbid rich people get a job, she rents.
Although she's not really rich, but you know.
She doesn't have to work.
That's true.
She's getting money, going on vacation, flirting with people, buying cocaine.
Yeah.
So she's renting out to people because that is a way to get income. I know. The politics and the whatever of the time made it so if you're working, you're just automatically seen as lesser than. This was an issue I had in The Other Bennett Sister where, oh my gosh, he's not good enough for you because he wants to become an optometrist. You need a gentleman who doesn't work and will probably ignore you for the rest of your lives.
Because that's what all happy marriages are made of.
Then, you gotta go to your lesser cousins, you know. Remember in Pride and Prejudice, you look down on us because my uncle runs a store in London. It is a department store. I know it's the American in me, but I just couldn't. And so I realized this. This is the background going into the story, but I cannot. But anyway, rents to this couple. They're from Australia. Although Perot points out they lay it on a little thick that they're from Australia.
Yeah, I was like, are these people who they say they are?
Probably not.
And I was very suspicious of them.
So the husband does a lot of gardening and gives Nick part of his garden stuff.
Which is sweet. A little weird.
I thought he was going to poison her with it, but that did not happen.
Oh, yeah. I definitely was like, he's going to try to hurt her.
I don't know. It's just murder mystery, man. Gotta suspect everyone.
Yeah.
Does not do that. I can proudly say they are not guilty of that.
Yeah. Also, I noticed this. Was it just a way the language worked back then? But I thought he was living with his wife, but then he called her mother.
Yes, it got me too.
What are you? Is this your wife or your mother?
And he kept saying it so much because he's introduced as husband and wife. Okay, so you go and meet him. He's like, oh, you need to come meet mother. And I was like, okay, yeah, I know some people are like father, mother. They call themselves that even if they don't have kids, which a little weird, but culture.
Interesting. Okay.
But then he did it for 3 paragraphs in a row. And I literally started doubting myself.
Me too. I was like, did they say mother and I just misheard?
Yeah, I was the same way.
I felt like I was being gaslit. I was like, did Agatha just forget what she made her and just didn't care to change?
He said it every single time he talked for 3 things in a row, which is weird. Probably playing into playing it on a little thick.
Yeah.
It's like calling everyone governor.
Yeah.
Or something just weird where you're just inserting it into every single one. And so, yeah, no, I literally was sitting there like, is this your mother? And then later on, oh, husband and wife. And I was like, okay.
But why call her mother? I was so baffled by that.
Because he's laying it on thick. Australians, man. They're so kooky. I don't know. So he is up and about and fine, but she has recently had a back injury, supposedly from a train crash, which I thought was sus because she has a terrible back injury and can't even get off the couch, but you're walking around fine. And supposedly they were traveling together.
Yeah, he was just really lucky.
He wasn't on that side of the train. It's fine. I don't know. They don't ask, so we don't learn, but I was sus of them.
Yeah, and rightfully so, eventually.
Yeah. Monday comes and Nick is throwing a party because there's going to be fireworks. And so everyone's going to come out and watch the fireworks.
The whole time listening to this, I was like, she's going to get shot.
Yeah, fireworks. Well, there's the gun again. But I was wondering, I don't know, I went back and forth. I was like, is she going to get shot? Because the person has been doing something different every single time. But I guess if you're desperate, which is kind of the vein they're going at. Point is, she's having a party. Maggie's going to be there. They get invited, of course. Before they go to the party, though, they go and see the cousin who's a lawyer and is like, hey, do you have the will? And he's like, what will?
And Poirot was like, that's suspicious.
And they're immediately like, never mind. We're gonna go now. And they leave. And all they got out of the conversation was him saying, oh, Nick is obsessed with the house. And I don't know what you're talking about with the will. So Perot is confused here because Nick seems pretty blasé about the house. And I don't know. I thought 2 things could be true at once. She could act blasé and care very much about it, because that seemed to be her personality in general, is she acted like, oh, it's all a lark. But she cared a lot.
Yeah.
So that wasn't like a trigger for me to notice anything. But Perot and Hastings are immediately like, so is he lying about the will and trying to inherit everything?
Yeah. Because they're like, he doesn't seem like the type of person to exaggerate things, though.
Yeah. And so he could get in a lot of trouble if he pretended that the will wasn't. But as it points out at the time, anyway, what money?
Yeah. Like,
Freddie is probably getting 2 pennies.
Yeah. If she's lucky.
If she's lucky. I'm just glad nobody's getting more of a liability, you know?
Yeah.
So that's weird. Why would he lie about that? But the Crofts, who are the Australians, like, he's like, yeah, I told her to write a will because she was getting an appendectomy. I told her to write a will. She didn't have her will. And then I posted it and then put it in the mailbox last February. And we are in beach season.
Yeah.
May-ish? June, July, August? I'm not really sure. But the point is, it's been some time.
It's been a hot minute.
It's very weird. And so that's kind of up in the air with the will. They finally get to meet Maggie.
She seems really sweet, even though her cousin's like, she's nothing special. And I'm like, dang, girl, okay.
Yeah, Nick is so mean about her cousin. She's like, oh, she's simple.
Not very smart. I was like, jeez.
But she's so dedicated to her. I don't know. She gave her a compliment, but even the compliment was a snarky insult.
Very underhanded, yeah.
So freaking rude. Once you figure out the ending, though, it makes much more sense.
Oh, yeah.
This woman is so catty. Oh, you see my friend over there? She does cocaine. This is my cousin. She's the most boring drivel you'll ever see alive. But hey, she's loyal like a dog, basically.
Yeah.
So, whatever. Then we get our second clue about someone named Michael Seton. Michael Seton wanted to travel around the world in an airplane. You hear about him in the beginning in a newspaper, and it's like, hey, Michael Seton's disappeared.
Yeah, very around the world in 80 days.
And then you get confirmation right before the party that they're just calling it. We don't know what happened to him. There is no way he is still alive. If he's still alive, he's on a tiny island and is never coming home. He's being declared legally dead. And Michael Seton is the son of Sir Matthew Seton, who is super rich, the second richest man in all of England, because of course he is.
Was he the son or the nephew?
Let me double check. Unfortunately, I didn't write that down. I have millionaire, sir, and ran bird sanctuaries.
I'm pretty sure it was nephew.
It's a close familiar relation. He is inheriting.
Yeah, he will get his money.
So he doesn't want, I mean, obviously you don't want to get disinherited, and he probably controlled his life a little bit, but he's the one that financed Michael Setton's trip around the world anyway. So immediately I was like, so either Michael Setton's dead, or he's pretending to be dead. And these books, either is possible.
Yeah, he's been here all along and no one knew it.
I always ran with theories that he was alive and with theories that he is dead, because you have to keep an open mind for everything. That's the only way you can solve these. You have to think of all of the possibilities, period. If you don't, it's the one you didn't think of.
Exactly.
So you find out, Nick and Michael Setton got kind of close last year. He even gave her a ride in the plane. And so immediately it was like, okay, so maybe Michael Setton has a motive that isn't obvious. He doesn't inherit from the will or anything like that. And so my first thought was, does she murder him because she could identify him super easily and he's trying to run a con? But like, that seemed real far-fetched. Agatha likes to keep something grounded in realities. And then my other one was wanting the property for bird sanctuary. And that's more his uncle's thing or his dad's thing.
Yeah, I have a feeling he did not like birds very much.
And so I threw those both out, but we're working here. Anyway, the little core group of friends have dinner together, and then Nick steps out to take a phone call or something. And then everyone goes out, and more people arrive to watch the fireworks. Just a bunch of people show up to watch the fireworks. Okay. Croft, the husband, shows up, and he's like, oh, it would have been bad luck if my wife came.
Yeah, like, what does that mean?
Y'all are weird. I don't like y'all.
Suspicious.
Nick gets cold and is like, hey, I'm going to go back to the house to get a warmer coat, and invites Maggie to go along. Peril and Hastings are also like, you know what? It is cold. And so they head toward the house a little bit later, and they find a figure laying on the ground, and that is where the chapter ends, because of course that's where the chapter ends. Next chapter, you find out, oh no, it's Maggie.
Yeah, and earlier in the book they point out, they're like, Nick, why are you in black?
Yeah, she's like, I hate the color black. But, you know, I bought this because why not?
I'm gonna wear it. No weird reason.
None.
Yeah, until they revealed that, I was like, maybe she's pre-mourning. She's being dramatic or something.
Maybe, but here's the thing. This is where I started to cook a little bit. Immediately, I was like, wait, so if Nick gets 4 accidental murder hits, near misses, quote unquote, but come on. She gets 4 attempts at her life and Maggie gets shot the first night she's there?
Right?
That seems intentional. So I had that running through my head the rest of this book. That for some reason, they were trying to get Maggie, of all people, out to the lodge to kill her for some reason.
Yeah.
And pass for Patrick here. I'm feeling pretty good about that now. I solved like half of it. So, of course, the police show up, the doctor show up, all that stuff. So they have a housekeeper named Ellen who has a husband and a child. Neither of those two are important. We will ignore them.
And honestly, they're so mean about them. They're like, the husband's kind of dumb and the kid's creepy.
Well, the kid is creepy.
I know. I was just like, dang, okay.
I'm very concerned.
Oh, yeah. I was like, this is a small serial killer in the making.
He enjoys watching pigs get killed.
Yeah, and the dad's just like, oh, yeah, you know, kids. They all enjoy watching the pigs get killed. No, they don't.
That's very concerning.
Girl, I'm a little worried for your safety.
Well, maybe he has a good relationship with his mother, and that makes all the difference. But the point is, Ellen is weird. Hastings calls the cops and she runs up to him kind of excited, like, did someone get hurt? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, oh, it's Freddie, isn't it? And Hastings is like,
no.
And then she seems flabbergasted and runs off.
Yeah, it's like that whole family's a little weird, honestly.
That was the most suspicious thing you could have done.
Yeah, how to make yourself suspicious 101. Do that.
But this did have my plan B, where Freddie is actually the target of these different accidents, beside the mirror one. And so I immediately took that away. I was like, okay, if you wanted Freddie, you could have gotten Freddie.
Yeah.
But this is the first time you could have gotten Maggie. So Peril has an idea. Nick needs to be protected at all costs. So she is going to go into a nursing home with strict orders that literally no one can go see her. because shock.
I mean, pretty smart.
Solid. 10 out of 10.
That's a really good plan.
Because the friends keep popping up being like, oh, I can't go see him. And then Perot being like, oh, doctor's orders.
Doctor's orders, those doctors, man.
You know how doctors do. They be saying things and stuff. Not at all my plan.
I want to see her too, It's really frustrating, man.
Life is so hard. What they find out from the police is that there were 3 bullets retrieved, but no gun. Perot thinks the gun has been tossed into the sea because that is what he would do. He is being generous to the murderer, you find out. But yeah, 3 bullets and fireworks, so it covered it up. But I'm just like, there's no way you didn't know that was Maggie. Oh yeah, she was wearing her cover, and oh gosh, they were both wearing black dresses, but I don't know. I felt sus about that.
If you've been intent on killing this one person, you're not going to just all of a sudden get them mixed up with their cousin.
Anyway, like I said, it's sus. So Perot comes up with a bunch of theories, which is great, because he's like, if this was a detective novel, and then he lists a bunch of fantastical ones, and he's like, but this is real life. And then he's like, oh, but Lazarus wanting the painting was sus. And I was like, that still plays into my theory. I know who the target was, but not who did it, and that painting was sus.
Yeah. I mean, his reason for doing that, smart, but a little shady.
Yeah. But I like what the author is doing here, because she does this, I think, masterfully through a lot of her books. She doesn't want her readers to have a lot of open thinking, because then you'll be able to guess the plot easier and guess what it is. So she'll do little things that subconsciously close your thinking.
Oh.
And so here's a great example. He puts out a bunch of theories and then says, but none of those are possible. And so your brain kind of closes like, oh, I better not come up with fantastical theories that I would see in detective novels.
Yeah, that's smart.
I like it. She does that in a lot of her books, and I think it's very well done. So Nick has a change brought over her, and she's like, nothing's worth living for anymore. And it's not because Maggie died, because she could not have cared less about her cousin.
Yeah, I was like, why is she so distraught now that her cousin's dead? Girl, you were just saying you didn't like her very much.
Perot decides that the change in her came when the phone call happened after dinner, and then afterward she was just playing the gracious host and whatever, and then the murder got her over the edge. By the way, in the newspaper, sentence declared death. Huh, crazy, Hastings. I wonder if those two things are related.
Curious. It would be quite the coincidence, now wouldn't it?
Anyway, Freddie shows up and is like, I didn't know the cousin, but hey, I was totally staying with Lazarus. He's a rich guy. It's cool. Bye.
I really end up liking Freddie by the end of this book.
Yeah, I've made her a little dismissive, but I liked her interaction. But that's literally the information we get from her.
Yeah.
So they go to the nursing home for answers.
It's also crazy to me that I was like, nursing home, isn't that for like old people?
So in our terminology, it is.
Yeah.
What they're referring to is basically like private hospitals, like these little homes where there would be nurses and you would be taken care of.
Yeah, it threw me off for a second.
Yeah. And I think they even mention Sir Matthew Seton spent his last days in a nursing home to throw you off a little bit more. But this is where Nick admits that she was engaged to Seton. And oh gosh, I only recently hinted it to someone, which I guess was Freddie? I don't actually think that ever comes up again, who she claims to have hinted at. But maybe she didn't hint at anybody. And she's just like, oh yeah, people know. I'm not just saying that right this second.
It's not just conveniently coming up now.
This has been a long time coming. Oh, and by golly, she's gonna benefit from his will. So if Sir Matthew dies and then Michael Seton dies, then she inherits the second biggest fortune in all of England. So at this point, Perot's like, it's either Freddie or Charles. And to which I said, why not both? Because she always throws culprits together. Ellen claims that, oh, I was working in the house. I didn't want to go see the fireworks. I don't know. It gotta work in that dining room and whatever. She just goes out of her way to be the most suspicious person possible. All you had to go is walk up to Perot and be like, hey, I thought it was Freddie because Nick and her were on the outs. But I guess I was wrong. I had a feeling this evil house, something bad was going to happen, because she does bring up superstition that the house is evil. Not haunted, though, just evil.
Just evil. I mean, I guess that's the same thing, right?
But she goes out of her way to be so suspicious. Goodness.
She definitely did not help herself.
Yeah. So they tear through the house looking for this will. They find a letter confirming that Freddie uses drugs, just, casually on top of Nick's writing desk.
Is this where Ellen talks about the secret panel? Or is that later?
Yes. Ellen mentions, I worked here as a kid and the cook told me about this secret panel that's in this room, or maybe it's in the library. And then they ask Nick about it and Nick's like, there's no secret panel.
I don't know what she's talking about.
She must have made that up / remembered wrong or something. So along with the letter, they go up to her room, search through her stuff. Hastings gets all hot and bothered because Perot looks through her unmentionable drawers.
Yes.
And Perot's like, bruh, of course she's hiding love letters here. They find a couple love letters, like 3.
Which is a very small amount.
And one of them confirms the will. And so that proves that Nick knew about it. But anyone could have read the letters. Like Ellen could have gotten to them. Freddie could have gotten to them.
Yeah.
Anyone who was in that room probably also thought, that's where letters will be hidden. Anyone who's snoopy could have found them. So they go back to Nick and they're like, there's no will anywhere. And Nick is like, weird. Croft for sure made me do that. And he was supposed to mail it. I'm sure he did mail it. It was witnessed by Ellen and her husband.
And he also convinced me to not use a typical will form. That's not weird.
Yeah, you should just write it.
Just did it on some normal paper,
Yeah, and this is where the, Charles hid the will falls apart.
Yeah.
If the will came out and it was different than the one Ellen and her husband witnessed, they could literally be like, hey, that's not the will.
That's not what we said.
Unless you are believing he's going to pay them off, but what happened to no obvious suspects?
Right?
But anyway, I never suspected Charles, really.
No.
Yeah, and I just believed Charles. Croft was like, nope, I definitely posted. And I'm like, I don't trust you.
I was like, you're too weird.
Except Perot thought the opposite. Perot thought it was Charles. And I was just like, I just don't see it as a thing.
No, yeah.
And so for once, I was right and Perot was wrong. And I don't know what my worldview is now.
You're like, am I a genius?
I thought the one thing I could depend on in this crazy world is that Perot is always right. But hey, at least he gets a fingerprint out of it.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's weird because Perot says, cool, I'm going to send this to Scotland Yard for them to look over their files to see if it matches anything. Then he meets the local police who are immediately like, we don't want Scotland Yard involved in this. So that sucks that you feel that way, sir, because they're already running prints. They're involved.
Too late for you.
Too late. Anyway, they found a note that seems to hint that someone's being blackmailed, and it seems to be Freddie.
Yeah, I feel really bad for her.
Yes. And so in the next scene, Perot and Challenger are talking. Like, he looked over the note, he put it on the table, starts talking to Challenger. Freddie shows up and is like, hey, Challenger, I want my watch. And Challenger gives it to her, and Perot notices, that looks exactly like Nick's watch.
And it's also a weird shape, apparently.
It's a weird shape. It is very circular.
It's very bulbous, is what I imagined.
Yeah. Anyway, she practically faints when she looks at the table.
Yeah, I felt so bad.
And then Perot's like, what could have caused her to do that? I was like, please tell me you were saying that for Hastings' benefit.
I know.
It's the note.
Poirot, you're smarter than this.
It's the note. You just put it down. Oh dear. So Freddie's being blackmailed with something. The police do their inquest. It gets nothing. Perot chats with Maggie's parents. Doesn't get anything from that, really. So they're like, okay, let's go to London. They go to London. They meet Seton's lawyers.
And where does Jap come in?
Okay, here's the thing.
That was a big sigh.
First of all, Seton lawyers confirmed that Magdalene Buckley is going to inherit. Then they meet Jap for lunch, because of course they always meet over food. Jap claims to have not seen Perot since he retired in Murder of Roger Ackroyd, because in that book he was growing vegetable marrows. And Jap is like, I haven't seen you since you said you were growing vegetable marrows. Except he was in Black Coffee, which, if you don't want to actually count that as canon, even though it absolutely is canon, fine. He was in The Mystery of the Blue Train.
Does Jap have memory loss or something?
And I'm pretty sure he was also in The Big Four. Black Coffee and Mystery of the Blue Train were fresh on my mind. It's been a hot minute since The Big Four, but I'm pretty sure he was in that book as well. What are you talking about, Jap? It's a rare day when there is a continuity error in these books, but that was kind of a big one.
Yeah.
So Croft's prints don't match anything, but they went ahead and called the city in Australia, and no one knows him. I'm not 100% sure how you would confirm that, because all we get from the description of him, here's a description of him, I wrote it down, of course I did. Bert Croft, 60s, at least 6 foot, powerful frame, weather-beaten face, almost bald, vivid blue eyes.
Yeah, that could be a lot of people.
That could be so many people, but apparently he doesn't exist. So, and that's the important thing. We're just not going to question it here. It's fine. Confirms Lesser's firm isn't doing well. He and Freddie could very easily be working together, but that seemed a little obvious. At this point, the people that benefit from the will would benefit. Oh, and hey, wouldn't you know it? Challenger's uncle is a quack doctor.
Goes to Paris a lot.
And does junk science and all that stuff. In the modern day, he would be running wellness retreats for Goop. That's kind of what we're talking about here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here's the second time. It's the second time in one chapter. I'm very disappointed, but it's fine. It doesn't actually cause any issues. Perot claims he has to have never disguised himself, except when he shaved his mustache, put on colored contacts, and pretended to be his twin brother in the Big Four. My guy. Never. Anyway, that's all we really get from Jap. Cool, I'm so glad that the local police didn't want Scotland Yard to get involved. Oh, dear.
They wouldn't have gotten much.
Anyway, they went away to London because Perot was like, oh, she's going to be safe in the nursing home. It's fine. Except they get word that, oh, no, she's gravely ill from cocaine poisoning. So it was in a box of chocolates that she ate, but the doctor points out that it's really crude. Like they cut apart the chocolate, put the cocaine in, and then put it back together. Nick, why didn't you notice that?
Yeah, why wouldn't you be like, why is this chocolate weirdly cut in half? Oh, well, I'm going to eat it.
That one specifically. Apparently only 3 were like that too, so it's not like, oh, this is what the chocolate looks like. Your girl is looking stranger and stranger.
Do people not look at the chocolates and be like, ooh, this one's the prettiest, I'm going to eat it first? Is that just me?
No, I look at the little map thingy and I'm like, which one is my favorite?
Those go first, every time.
I'm just saying, homegirls' stories be slipping.
She's starting to look a little messy.
And I immediately thought, oh, maybe it was Challenger who did it, because they go to the florist together to buy flowers for Nick. Perot buys a specific type of flowers and then signs a card and sends it on. And oh my gosh, but I didn't eat the chocolates from just anyone. I ate them from you. Look. And the card is exactly like the one sent with the flowers. And so I was like, okay, so she's working with Challenger.
Yeah.
That was my thought at this point. I didn't understand how else she would get the cocaine without him sending boxes of chocolate. Come to find out later, there's a different way she smuggled it in, so Challenger is innocent. But that's where my mind was. At this point, I was like, it's her and Challenger. But why? Why would she do this to herself? It's very weird. Girl's not telling the truth. Maybe someone blackmailing her, but how do you get blackmailed into committing your own murder, you know?
Yeah.
There's something sus here. But I thought Challenger was involved because he went to the florist store and he is not. I am sorry, Challenger. So they explained that 2 boxes of chocolates came for her, 1 through post and 1 through Lazarus. And at this point, I was like, maybe they're all in on it. Let's throw a Hail Mary here. The whole group of them have just been pretending to try to get this fortune somehow. But it doesn't make sense because Nick's gonna inherit anyway. So confused at this point. I had a lot of plots and thoughts and just things were not clicking. But yeah, they were both laying on the counter for 20 minutes before they got taken up. One of the boxes had the note that no one knows which one it was for sure. They asked Lazarus. Freddie's the one who sent him to buy the chocolate. Freddie claims that someone claiming to be Nick called and asked for a specific box of chocolates to be brought to her, but she couldn't confirm if it's actually Nick's voice. That one threw me a little bit. I was like, okay, maybe it is someone else.
Yeah, that one threw me off.
But I thought at this point that they were working in league with Nick.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it still didn't make sense. We still have the why here running around. So Perot does what Perot does best and decides the next 24 hours will be the most interesting because reasons. But the reason this time is actually a reason. We're going to pretend Nick is dead. She died from cocaine poisoning. We're going to see what happens.
We're going to play it up, say she succumbed.
Except Hastings gets a fever, so his mind is fuzzy as Perot runs around and does all these things to prepare, and you just get little blurbs where Perot walked in and told me this, and then later Perot walked in and told me that. And then later, he walked in and told me this. And I'm just like, you had one job, my man. You are Dr. Watson. You're supposed to listen to what Perot does.
Although it was so funny when Poirot was like, maybe it is a good thing that you got this fever because you really can't lie. Terrible at it.
Yeah, it's a very good thing you got sick because you didn't have to pretend that she was dead. Everyone was just like, oh, he's deathly ill. Except he's fine within 24 hours. That's a little sus, my man.
Something about the malaria?
I do not know enough about malaria to confirm nor deny, but it's a book, so it's very convenient, as you do. The important thing is time passes. So at this point, Perot has decided that Freddie didn't do it, which means she's in danger because she would be the next to inherit, right? There's this weird thing where Hastings is like, Lazarus could have done it, and Perot's like, oh my gosh, this changes everything. Except in solution 1, he did say that Lazarus was in on it, that if Freddie did it, that Lazarus would have had to be in on it. And then later on, Hastings is like, oh, but what if Lazarus was in on it? And he's like, oh my goodness. It's just the mystery of the blue train all over again.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
Anyway, the important thing is the next day, Perot gets a letter that, first of all, Hastings is like, so nothing happened? He's like, 24 hours, Hastings. We're not there yet.
Still holding out hope.
Next day, he gets a letter that Charles suddenly has the will dated from February.
Not suspicious at all.
This town is like an hour's drive. It seems like it could be larger, but it's like a snail could have taken it to Charles at this point.
Yeah.
Before the mail did? So here's the thing. They're talking about nicknames, and Perot says it's a shame that Frederica has to go by Freddie, and Hastings says, well, it sucks because not every name can have a bunch of nicknames like Margaret. And he lists out a couple of different nicknames for Margaret, and it clicked for me. Maggie could also be short for Magdalene.
Yeah, I had that same thought. I was like, oh.
And if Maggie is short for Magdalene, then Maggie and Nick have the same name. And so what if Maggie was the real victim because she is the one that married the pilot? Oh, by the way, Nick supposedly eloped or whatever. So she is the one that is benefiting from this will. So here we had two options. Either Seton was in on the murder because he fell in love with Nick afterwards, and so they set all this up, and they're gonna pull an Uno reverse, or Seton is innocent, this was all very convenient, and she just saw her chance to kill her cousin. So I had it solved at this point, and I feel very good about myself, except for whether or not Seton was involved or not. I didn't have enough information about him. And so at this point, I was like, it all makes sense except for the poisons. I could not figure out how she got the cocaine for the poisons. And so I was like, did she mail it later? And then like 3 days later get it because she knows the post office sucks? I could not figure that out. So that was the only thing holding me back. But at this point, of course, Perot gathers the suspects because Charles is going to read the will. Wouldn't you know it, Mrs. Croft inherits everything for the service to Nick's father because there was some sort of scandal in Australia and she helped him. She's not going to say what it was, though.
Because it totally happened, but she's not going to talk about it.
To which Perot, in all his flair for the dramatic, immediately, there is not even a switch in conversation. There is no easing it in. He literally just goes, hey, since everyone's here, let's have a seance.
Yeah, Hastings is quite the medium, and Hastings is like, dude, what?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, totally.
Good, Hastings, good. I'm actually very happy with you right now. Honestly, he's fine.
I was so worried that he was gonna blow it.
I felt so bad for him because I could see Perot doing that, just throwing him to the wolves and being like, oh yeah, Hastings is a great medium, and Hastings being like, I know nothing about seances. I wish you had told me about this before this. I have no idea what I'm doing here. But he just rolls with it. And so they start this seance, and what everyone agrees to it. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Guess who shows up? Nick walks into the room as a ghost and reveals that she's alive. And Mrs. Croft, and of course, really quickly, it's like, no, but she's actually alive. No, for real. She's actually in the room right now.
She's not dead.
And Mrs. Croft is like, oh, it's just a joke. And then Jap shows up to be like, oh, you're actually this other person who's an expert forger who took advantage of the situation. Good thing the local police did not want Scotland Yard involved. I guess technically they're not involved with the murder, just the forgery. So this is where you find out, oh, and then by the way, Freddy gets shot at from the window?
Yes.
I was so confused at this point. I'm like, Seton has to be alive. That has to be him. Nick is in the room. You can't shoot someone from outside the window when you're in the room.
But it's actually Freddy's husband who was eavesdropping and freaked Hastings out.
Yes, that did happen.
And Poirot was like, are you sure it was a face?
So that's Freddy's druggy husband who has been demanding money from her because they're still married and in the process of divorce, and was essentially threatening to shoot her / himself.
Little murder-suicide.
And so that's the twist of this book. Every other book neatly ties up in a bow with a solution, but this book had 3 mysteries running concurrently that were not related. And so you're trying to fit all these pieces together in one puzzle, and they don't fit because one of them is about birds, and then this other one just has a bunch of donuts, and then this one is a Thomas Kincaid Sleeping Beauty.
Yes.
Are these all puzzles that I own? Possibly.
Cannot confirm or deny.
Is that why they immediately came to mind? Maybe. But that's the whole thing. And so Perot announces he's had A through J as suspects, and J was mysterious person for mysterious reasons. And so he explains, actually, I added a K. And they're like, oh, so another mysterious person doing mysterious things? And he's like, that would just be another J. This is a K. And I was like, okay, you're trying to be a little clever here.
Yeah.
That was kind of pedantic of you, but okay. Anyway, the point is Nick did it.
Because she's greedy.
Yeah, and Perot is like, oh, I know who did it, and they're so suspicious or whatever. Anyway, it's a setup. Jap found Nick trying to retrieve the gun from the secret compartment and put it in Freddy's wrap. So I guess Scotland Yard is involved in the murder.
Or at least Jap.
So did shoot her cousin because they have the same name. She is a liar. She is obsessed with the house. She tried to romance Seton because she was on the hunt for a rich man so she could get money to clean up this house. Except he just thought she was fun and then actually fell for her cousin. And that's why earlier Nick was like, she's boring and plain and nobody likes her. Because somebody did like her.
Was jealous.
And in fact, that's why it was mean about Freddy, because Lazarus liked Nick for a hot second. He appeared to be a rich man, and then he falls for Freddy. And so that's why she was trying to make everyone think Freddy committed the murder by putting the gun in her wrap. Perot turns to Freddy is like, she was not your friend. And Freddy's a little surprised that she hated her so much that she would resort to pitting murder on her, but she's not actually surprised. More so, I'm a little surprised she hated me for this long and didn't just, get rid of me.
Yeah.
We've been hanging out for like a solid year that she's hated me. Nick is a very patient person.
And doesn't someone at the beginning point out that women friendships are like really fake? They're all like, darling this and darling that, you never know.
Oh yeah, seriously, Perot's like, yeah, if 2 guys hate each other, they'll be mean to each other, but girls are like, darling, which, like I said, pretty accurate in certain social situations. And definitely for the time period. So Maggie reads some of the love letters to Nick because she's obviously a very good actress. But I don't understand why Maggie read the part of the letter that mentioned that she's in the will of Michael Seton.
A little bit too trusting?
A little too personal. It was just weird. If that happened to me, that would feel like somebody else's business, you know?
Yeah.
If my mother-in-law was like, oh, I've willed this much to you, I wouldn't be blabbing it around to people.
Right?
That's her personal financial stuff. It's weird.
How embarrassing for you if that changes?
I don't know. That just felt... I thought British people didn't tell anyone anything. Isn't that their thing? Anyway, that's not the point.
I think we'll need to ask the British person we know.
Then it's definitely the thing, because she is tight-lipped.
So true.
So yeah, Nick just took advantage of the situation, fakes her death attempts, invites Maggie to come out. That's one of the other things. They got a letter from the mom that Maggie sent her, and it's like, hey, I don't understand why I had to come Monday instead of Tuesday. And so you find out, she was coming Tuesday anyway.
Yeah.
Sus. Oh, and she had the cocaine on her because her and Freddie both have watches that you use for drug smuggling. So yeah, it was in the watches. And wouldn't you know it, Challenger is a drug runner. That got me.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. But then I was like, it makes sense because they're talking about how he's always out on the sea.
Always going to see his uncle.
Yeah, Hastings was shocked.
Of course, because Hastings liked him. Hastings liked everybody.
Hastings has questionable friend choices.
Even then, a little bit. What are you getting out of this, man?
Other than feeling stupid.
But Hastings likes everybody. So I kind of liked that. And so in a way, Agatha Christie used her trope of, oh, don't pay attention to him. He's just an older military guy in love with a younger girl. You know, like we've seen before. Drug runner. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. So you come to find out one of the things that he couldn't understand is that there was the little note in the chocolates from Perot, or supposedly from his handwriting. Apparently she took it from the flowers. It is the note he wrote that were on the flowers, and she just put it in the box.
Yeah, so would no one notice that the note in the flowers was missing?
I was shocked that Perot didn't check.
Yeah.
Because if he would have checked, he could have been like, oh, is literally the one from my flowers.
Exactly.
That seems like a slip-up on his part, but that's okay. We love him anyway. But there you go. He's like, yeah, as soon as I realized that maybe she's lying, everything fell into place a little bit. Oh, Freddie is almost sober, and she is planning to stay that way. Good for you, girl. Fight it. That is a hard, hard drug to break the habit for.
Her and Jim get married.
Yes, her and Jim are going to get together, and Jim has plans to turn it around, but if he doesn't turn it around, Freddie's happy to be poor with him. He's good.
Which is so sweet.
It's great. It's what he actually needed. And, oh, by the way, Nick randomly is like, Freddie, I need your wrist watch before you learn about the cocaine smuggling. And so it's just really weird. She just bullies Freddie, is like, give me your wristwatch. And Freddie just hands it to her.
Yeah.
That was weird. Oh, wait. Oh, it has a whole dose of cocaine in it. And wouldn't it be a shame if she took it?
Actually OD'd.
Perot's chaotic good is showing. Once again, it's death on the Nile. If you are a purveyor of justice, you will be unsatisfied.
Yeah.
But Perot's just like, this is better. She's never going to be repentant. She's going to get herself hanged anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe it's just better that this happens like this and the government doesn't have to pay for all that. Not his motives. That's such an American thing to say.
Yeah.
But basically, it's just better for everyone if we just take this out of the equation.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Lazarus, this was a pretty good way to end. Lazarus asked for that one painting for $50 because he knew that she would get it checked and see what it was actually worth, and found out, oh, it's $20. So next time he was like, hey, let me give you X amount of money for this painting, she'll think, oh, he's a sucker and will give me a lot of money, because apparently he's like, yeah, the one in the corner over there is worth like $5,000.
A smart business plan, honestly.
That was kind of ruthless, my guy.
Ruthless, but a smart business plan.
But it works out because Freddie's probably going to inherit.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Charles gets the house. She gets the finances. So maybe he can work it out with Charles, but
yeah,
we will see. That is the ending. General thoughts. Perot seems so much more himself in this book than he did.
Yeah.
In The Mystery of the Blue Train. And granted, even Agatha Christie was like, yeah, he was off his game for that book. But I don't know, we pointed out, he just felt depressed in that book. He felt disorganized, unfocused. Where this one, he feels much more his manic self. We are back. Agatha is happily married and going on adventures and writing what she wants to write. So, starting a detective club. Detection club. I'm
same thing. It's fine.
It's fine. So yeah, I'm for it. I'm about it. I'm happy for her. We have a lot more Perot books to go through, so I'm happy we are back.
Yes, I was happy the normal Poirot was back. Also, why no Bella?
I know Bella.
And Hastings is, I don't know, still don't like him.
She would have been too helpful.
Exactly.
Let's be honest, she would have called it out so much faster.
She would have been like, oh, it's this girl. They would have been like, what?
She is being catty to all her friends. She is sus. She might have actually talked to Maggie, and Maggie might have said, yeah, it's weird that I'm here a day earlier. We would have solved this so much faster.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bella would have been too useful is the answer.
Exactly.
We will just have to accept. One question for the author. I'm curious who her favorite character in this book would be.
That's a good one.
Because in other books, you can tell she has favorites just because of the amount of screen time they get, or how detailed they are, or how much backstory they have, even though they're not important.
Oh, that's another thing. I don't know why I just remember this. When Jap was like, oh, and I see your face fungus is still going well. And Poirot is so baffled by this. And Hastings has to be like, your mustache? And he's like, oh, yes, my mustache.
Yeah, it is very fine. Thank you.
The face fungus just made me laugh.
That would be so concerning if you did not understand what was happening. Like that one TikTok where the mom didn't know how to say carousel in English, so they kept saying horse tornado.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah. I can just Poirot being like, face fungus? I mean, so concerned.
And he's like, your mustache. And he's like, oh, yes, we can agree here.
Yeah.
Very proud. So that was my question. So many of them had backstories. So many of them had descriptions and screen time and just like a bunch of other stuff where it doesn't seem that they needed it or whatever. So I just feel like she liked a lot of the characters.
Yeah. I mean, these all seem very fleshed out characters as well.
Yes. Which is not necessarily something she does in all of her books.
Yeah. Like you can usually tell who the more important characters are because they are more fleshed out and three-dimensional in a sense.
Or there'll just be a random side character that gets this really long description and then you never see again. And you're just like, you saw that person on the train, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
And granted, because there are 3 crimes happening, you do have to have 3 crimes worth of people fleshed out. But I don't know. I'd be curious who her favorite character is. I wouldn't be surprised if it were Nick.
Or Freddie. I don't know.
Or Freddie. I would think it's one of the women, though.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem to be as jazzed about the men.
I sort of had 2 questions, sort of going back to your general thought about Poirot seeming more like himself. I was wondering if his mood was related to like how Agatha was feeling at the time of writing the books. The last books, he seemed a little angsty boy, depressed. So I was like, that was a rough time in her life. Maybe now that she's happy and traveling and married again, he's back to his normal self.
That's what I think.
Yeah, and then my second question was, it seems like between this and Black Coffee, there's a lot of play or play adjacent things in these group of books, and I was just wondering why. Maybe she was just like, you know what? Plays. Because Nick talked about wanting to produce a play in-house and all of that.
Yes, that was one thing she mentions, oh, I wish I could have put on a play at this place, which Perot takes to mean like she wanted to be the actress. I just assumed she wanted to watch a play at her house.
Yeah.
So I didn't catch that. But maybe it could have been on the mind.
Yeah.
I don't know. She did publish 2 books between now and then. So I would have to look at those to have a better track. But maybe she is like, okay, where was I last? The play.
So sort of 2 questions this time.
I am curious what lessons she probably learned from writing the play that she brought into doing her books later on. Because obviously it's different mediums, but writing practice is writing practice. I do think she does a lot of set pieces in the book very well, but I do feel like there's much more descriptions of the place that they're in.
Yeah.
Rating. I'd give this a continental breakfast out of 10. It looks light because it's always like muffins and lighter stuff.
Yeah.
But it's a buffet and you're gonna stuff yourself.
Absolutely.
That's 100% what this book is. It looked light and fluffy. It's a vacation, maybe somewhere tropical, but you are gonna stuff yourself on this book.
Oh, yeah. I gave this book 6 lives out of 10 because of the 6 attempts, using that word in quotation marks, on Nick's life.
So wouldn't that be 7 lives? Or did she die?
I'm going to say she died at the end.
Okay, that's fair. She does.
Because, I mean, that one's not an attempt. Like, she's actually trying to kill herself.
Yeah.
Because I had the picture that breaks the boulder, the first bullet, the cocaine, and then the person shooting at Maggie would have looked like an attempt on her life.
Read again? Yes.
Absolutely.
I would read this one again. Because there's a lot of obvious ones that he points out. Oh, she was lying in this case. But there's probably a lot of smaller things, too, that you could catch her out on.
Yeah.
And I think that would be pretty interesting.
sort of like with the forgers.
Plus, it's a good cast of characters.
Yeah, I really enjoyed these characters. There's some characters that I'm like, I wish we just had like a little epilogue.
A little bit. Can they show up in a later book? How are you going?
Mostly Freddie.
Did the art dealer's life turn around, or are they poor and happy? Either way is fine. I just want to know.
Yeah, I think I'd read all the Poirot books again except for Halloween Party.
I probably wouldn't read Mystery of the Blue Train. I might, because I'm a completionist, and if I was like, oh, I want to read all the Peril books again, I will read all the Peril books again, whether I like it or not. But yeah, favorite of the series so far. I'm still gonna say Murder of Roger Ackroyd. This is a close second.
Yeah, I know I changed it on some episode, but I don't remember what I changed it to.
Whatever book we were reading at the time.
Yeah, if I was ever looking for a book to reread, it would be Roger Ackroyd, so I'll take that as an indication of like that's just my favorite and not just the one we've read most recently.
But have you read this book? Where should Perot try to vacation next? Try being the operative word. Do you have any book recommendations for us? Tell us all about it in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit like. And if you're enjoying yourself, hit subscribe for more. Thank you for exploring Peril at End House with us. Join us next time when we'll be covering Life and Death by Stephanie Meyer. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Hannah Rossell.
And we hope to see you in a frontier next time. Escape With Me Book Club is a Lunar Skulk production. Check us out on TikTok or Instagram to keep up to date with us. Lunar_SKULK.